American troops are under attack in Iraq, not in the Strait of Hormuz, not at a naval installation in Bahrain, not at an air base in Kuwait, where the threat has been building for weeks and the defensive preparations have been ongoing. In Erbil, Iraq, the capital of the Kurdistan region, a city of 2 million people, a location where the United States has maintained a military presence and a diplomatic compound that the American government has treated as one of its most important operating nodes in the broader Middle East strategic architecture, the IRGC sent Shahed 101 attack drones. Not ballistic missiles with limited precision and significant intercept vulnerability. Not cruise missiles launched from coastal positions that American air defenses can track from early in the flight profile. Small, slow, difficult to detect, numerous autonomous attack drones. The Shahed 101 variant that the IRGC has been refining specifically for exactly this kind of saturation attack against protected installations. They flooded the airspace above Erbil in numbers designed to overwhelm defensive intercept capacity through volume rather than through individual performance. American air defenses went to work. The footage is unambiguous. Intercept after intercept. Clean kills against incoming drones in sequence. The interceptors rising to meet the inbound threats and eliminating them before they reached their targets. The defensive network around the Erbil installations was performing. And then, despite all of that, despite the intercepts, despite the air defenses performing exactly as designed, one appears to have gotten through. Burning in the footage in the region of the airport area adjacent to the U.S. troop locations, a direct impact. Confirmed burning, unknown damage, unknown casualties. As of the time of this writing, no final assessment. That unknown, were there casualties? Were American service members killed? Is the single most important variable in the entire current operational picture. And it is unresolved. Simultaneously, Sulaymaniyah, Iraq's second major city, another location with American military and intelligence presence, came under attack. Kuwait was struck with multiple cruise missiles and dozens of drones simultaneously with the Erbil attack. The Kuwaiti Ministry of Defense confirmed its air defenses shot down 4 cruise missiles and 21 drones. 21. In a single day. That number is not a focused targeted strike against a specific military installation. That is a saturation attack across Kuwait's air defense network designed to exhaust intercept capacity and find gaps through which something reaches a target. The IRGC did not launch one attack against one location. It launched simultaneous attacks against Erbil and Sulaymaniyah in Iraq and across Kuwait in a single coordinated operational package. This is the most geographically dispersed and operationally ambitious offensive action the IRGC has undertaken in the current conflict. And it was executed on the same day that U.S. officials told Reuters that American strikes in Iran are aimed at setting the stage for more complex operations. But let's back all the way up, because the Erbil attack requires the full weight of its context to be understood. Not just what happened in the overnight hours, but what the choice of Erbil specifically communicates about where the IRGC's command structure is in its strategic calculus right now. The Kurdistan region of Iraq is the most stable and most pro-Western political entity in the broader Iraqi space. Erbil has been the operational hub through which American engagement with Iraq's northern regions has been conducted for decades, through the post-2003 stabilization period, through the rise and defeat of ISIS, through the sustained American military presence that remained after the major combat operations of that campaign concluded. The U.S. military base in Erbil and the U.S. consulate compound represent American institutional presence in Iraqi territory that has been specifically protected through the complex diplomatic relationships between Washington, Baghdad, and Erbil across multiple administrations. The IRGC attacking the Erbil base and consulate is not equivalent to the IRGC attacking a Bahraini military installation. Bahrain is a Gulf state that joined the active military coalition against Iran. Kuwait is a Gulf state from whose territory HIMARS ground-launched missiles have been fired toward Iranian targets. Those two countries are active belligerents in the current conflict. Iraq, and specifically the Kurdistan region, is not. The Iraqi government in Baghdad has been attempting to maintain a position of fraught neutrality, deeply uncomfortable with the American military campaign occurring in its neighborhood, constitutionally unable to expel American forces without domestic political consequences, and simultaneously subjected to pressure from IRGC-linked Iraqi militia networks that have their own position within the Iraqi government's coalition. Attacking the Erbil U.S. military base is the IRGC extending its retaliation past the states that are actively fighting it and into territory that has not joined the conflict. It is the IRGC making a decision, either through the shadow general's autonomous operational authority or through a genuine top-level command decision, to widen the geographic scope of its attacks to include American installations in nominally neutral territory. The implications of that decision for Iraqi politics, for the American-Iraqi relationship, and for the regional coalition's coherence are enormous and are still developing. There is something specific about the Erbil attack that the immediate coverage has not fully processed. The IRGC chose to attack an American location in a city associated with Kurdish political authority, the same Kurdish political communities that have historically been among the most persistently anti-IRGC forces in the broader Iranian Kurdish political dynamic. Erbil is not just an American target. It is a target whose selection communicates something to the Iraqi Kurdish political community about what the IRGC is willing to do to cities associated with Kurdish governance if those cities host American military presence. The dual message, to Washington and to Erbil simultaneously, is not accidental. IRGC targeting is never purely military. It always carries political communication embedded in the target selection. Now examine the U.S. response that was already underway as the Erbil attack was continuing, because the simultaneity of attack and counterattack is itself an analytical fact. 2 large explosions on Hengam Island, located off the coast of Qeshm Island, one of Iran's largest and most strategically positioned islands in the Strait of Hormuz region. Hengam is not a random target. It sits in the geographic heart of the IRGC's maritime operational zone, positioned to support fast attack boat operations, reconnaissance, and coordination of the harassment campaign that has been the engine of this conflict. Simultaneous explosions in Khuzestan province, specifically Ahvaz, a location that has now been struck across multiple consecutive operational cycles, indicating either that new targets have been continuously identified there or that the IRGC has been attempting to reconstitute capability in the same geographic area between strikes. CENTCOM confirmed the targets for the current operational cycle: Bandar Abbas, Khormaj, Ahvaz, Qeshm, Tonb Islands, Bushehr, and Kuhestak. 7 specific locations, representing the continuation of the systematic campaign against the IRGC's coastal military architecture, but now joined by something that deserves the most careful analytical attention of anything in the current operational picture. U.S. forces struck and destroyed an Iranian 35mm anti-aircraft gun emplacement located outside the Bushehr nuclear plant. Read that sentence with the specificity it requires. Not a random air defense position somewhere in Bushehr province. An anti-aircraft gun specifically positioned outside the Bushehr nuclear facility. And the released footage of that strike is being described by officials and analysts tracking the campaign with a specific phrase: softening up the defenses. The strike did not destroy the nuclear facility. It destroyed the weapon that was defending the nuclear facility against aerial attack. That is a targeting choice that communicates its own operational logic with complete clarity to anyone familiar with how pre-strike preparation works in military campaign planning. You do not destroy the anti-aircraft emplacement protecting a facility unless you intend to subsequently attack that facility. You do not invest a precision munition against a 35mm gun outside a nuclear plant unless the nuclear plant is inside the targeting envelope of the operations that follow. The anti-aircraft gun is not a target of independent military significance. Removing it is meaningful only if something is coming for what it was protecting. The Bushehr nuclear facility has been the target that Russian warnings, diplomatic considerations, and the complexity of nuclear infrastructure targeting have combined to keep at the edge of the American targeting envelope throughout this conflict. It hosted Russian technical personnel, the people being evacuated through continuous special flight operations. It was warned against by the Kremlin as a site where Russian interests created an implicit deterrence against American strikes, and its nuclear character creates legal and political dimensions that purely military targets do not carry. The 35mm anti-aircraft gun outside Bushehr is gone. The facility it was defending is not yet struck. But the air defense position that was the first layer of protection against the aircraft that would strike it has been specifically and deliberately eliminated. In military campaign planning, and that sequence has a name, it is called shaping. You shape the battlefield, eliminate the defenses, suppress the early warning, remove the obstacles before the main operation. The shaping operation for a Bushehr strike has just been executed and documented in released footage. And then there is the sentence from U.S. officials speaking to Reuters that changes the analytical framework for everything that is happening right now. Recent U.S. strikes on Iran are aimed not only at forcing open the Strait of Hormuz, but also at destroying Iranian military capabilities Washington would want eliminated before launching more complex operations. This is helping set the stage if needed. Read that sentence again, slowly, every word. Not only at forcing open the Strait of Hormuz, the stated objective, freedom of navigation, protecting commercial shipping, ending IRGC maritime harassment, is explicitly confirmed as not the complete objective. There's another objective operating simultaneously alongside it. The strikes are destroying Iranian military capabilities that Washington would want eliminated before something else happens, before something that the people briefing Reuters are describing as complex operations. Operations that would require prior elimination of the specific military capabilities that have been targeted across the 6 consecutive nights of this campaign, setting the stage if needed. The if-needed construction is the diplomatic hedge. It preserves the possibility that the complex operations remain contingent, that if a diplomatic development intervenes, the stage that has been set does not necessarily become the theater in which those operations occur. But the stage is being set regardless of the diplomatic hedging. The military capabilities are being eliminated regardless of whether the complex operations ultimately require them to be eliminated for the operation's success. The preparation is happening in parallel with the diplomacy. And the preparation's product, an Iran whose coastal air defenses have been systematically degraded, whose radar networks have been blinded, whose anti-aircraft positions outside nuclear facilities have been specifically struck, is a product that serves certain specific operational requirements. What complex operations require the prior elimination of the specific military capabilities that have been targeted? The analytical possibilities narrow quickly when examined against the actual target set. Island seizure operations in the Strait of Hormuz. If American or coalition forces were to physically occupy and secure the strategically critical islands in the Strait, Greater Tonb, Lesser Tonb, Abu Musa, Qeshm, they would require the prior elimination of exactly the coastal defense systems, radar networks, anti-ship missile positions, and air defense infrastructure that has been the focus of the strike campaign. You do not land forces on an island with functioning IRGC air defenses, cruise missile launchers, and anti-aircraft guns still operational. You land after those systems have been eliminated. The strikes have been eliminating exactly those systems. Ground force operations along the Iranian coastline. The Valiat barracks in Abbasabad, Tehran, a critically important military installation in the Iranian capital, was reported by eyewitnesses to be undergoing evacuation as of this afternoon. A Tehran military site being evacuated is the most significant geographic signal yet that the conflict is approaching the capital in ways that the Iranian command structure cannot dismiss as limited to the southern coastal zone. If the Tehran military establishment believes its institutions may be targeted, the anticipated operation is not limited to the coastal geography of the Strait of Hormuz, broader air campaign extensions. The 35mm anti-aircraft gun outside Bushehr, nuclear plant being specifically eliminated as a shaping operation. The GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator publicly named by the president as the instrument for what he called a big fat shot against Pickaxe Mountain. Trump's refusal to give a hard deadline for bridge bombing, while saying the Iranians better behave. The Situation Room meeting on July 14th to review plans for a broader military campaign extending beyond the ongoing strikes around Hormuz. These are not independent developments. They are simultaneous components of a preparation architecture that is coherent and directional in ways that the phrase setting the stage captures precisely. The stage is being set. The production being prepared for that stage is not yet confirmed. But the set construction tells you what kind of production is being planned. The Tehran barracks evacuation deserves its own analytical attention because it is the first confirmed indication that the conflict's anticipated geographic expansion has reached the consciousness of military authorities inside the Iranian capital itself. The Valiat barracks in Abbasabad is not a peripheral military installation in a coastal province. It is a critically important military site inside Tehran, the city that hosts the supreme leader's institutional apparatus, the government ministries, the Revolutionary Guard's command structure, and the 2 million people who live in the political and cultural center of Iran. Military site evacuations inside Tehran do not happen because someone is cautious. They happen because whoever ordered the evacuation has assessed a credible threat of strike against that specific location. The assessment driving the evacuation is the same intelligence picture that American targeting planners are working from. If the Valiat barracks is being evacuated because its occupants believe it is going to be struck, it is because the occupants are reading the same operational signals that the Reuters briefing confirmed to the world. The current strikes are setting the stage for complex operations that would require prior elimination of Iranian military capabilities. A militarily significant barracks in Tehran is exactly the kind of capability that would need to be eliminated before complex operations in the capital's vicinity could proceed. Trump's exchange on the bridge bombing deadline is the public version of the private calculation that is currently underway in the Situation Room. Asked whether he is giving the Iranians a deadline before he starts bombing bridges, Trump said he doesn't like giving deadlines. Then, they pretty much know. They better behave. The absence of a hard deadline is itself the message. No deadline means the strikes could begin at any moment. No deadline means the decision has already been made in principle, and what remains is the trigger. And the trigger is IRGC behavior, not a calendar date. Iran said it called and wants to make a deal. Iran simultaneously said there are absolutely no negotiations, and its continued focus is on the fighting. The same command fragmentation that has been the analytical through line of this entire conflict is now producing contradictory public statements about whether peace talks are even happening. Someone in the Iranian system told someone that Iran wants to negotiate. Someone else in the Iranian system is publicly declaring that no negotiations exist, and the focus is on fighting. These are not compatible statements from a unified command. They are the public expression of the internal contest between the faction that wants an off-ramp and the faction that has made the calculation, or has been forced into the logic, that off-ramps are existential threats to what they are. Netanyahu expected in Washington for Lindsey Graham's funeral and a meeting with Trump. At exactly the moment when the Situation Room has been convened to review broader campaign plans, when the Bushehr nuclear plant's anti-aircraft defenses are being specifically eliminated, and when U.S. officials are publicly describing the current strikes as setting the stage for complex operations, the Netanyahu-Trump meeting at this specific moment is not primarily a diplomatic courtesy call. It is a coordination mechanism for the next phase of an operation that has been consistently and importantly bilateral in its strategic implications, even when its tactical execution has been primarily American. Now go back to Erbil, because everything in the operational picture, the Situation Room meeting, the Reuters briefing about setting the stage, the Tehran barracks evacuation, the Bushehr anti-aircraft shaping operation, exists in its full strategic weight only when it is placed alongside the fact that American troops were directly attacked on July 15, 2026. The attack on the U.S. base and consulate in Erbil with Shahed 101 drones is the threshold event that changes the domestic American political environment for every decision that follows. Throughout this conflict, American forces have been stationed in locations that Iran has attacked, and the intercept success rates have been high enough that the attacks on those locations have not produced American military deaths in numbers that create the kind of domestic political pressure that fundamentally transforms the calculus for escalation decisions. The Erbil attack, with its apparent direct impact in the airport region of the U.S. base, introduces the possibility that has been the most carefully guarded boundary throughout this conflict. American service members killed in direct Iranian attack. One got through in Erbil. There is burning in the footage. The damage assessment is not yet confirmed. But the possibility that American troops were killed or wounded in Erbil is, as of the time of the current operational picture, not yet ruled out. And the political and military implications of that possibility transforming into confirmed fact would generate a response decision environment in Washington that is categorically different from the one that has governed the current strike campaign. Trump has stated in explicit terms, in the Truth Social post that announced 1,000 missiles locked and loaded, that a successful Iranian attack on American personnel would trigger a response at a level Iran has never seen before. That commitment was made before the Erbil attack. If the Erbil attack produced American casualties, that commitment has been activated, not as a diplomatic communication, not as a deterrent statement, but as a publicly stated executive order that is already prepared and waiting for a trigger condition that may have been met this morning in Iraqi Kurdistan. The three pressure tracks operating on July 15th have converged on a configuration that the conflict's entire previous arc has been building toward. The military track has validated the setting the stage assessment in the most direct terms available, shaping operations against the Bushehr nuclear plant's air defenses, evacuation of Tehran military sites, island and coastal defense infrastructure being eliminated at a pace and completeness that matches the pre-operational requirements for forces that might subsequently operate in those spaces. 21 IRGC drones shot down over Kuwait in a single day. Direct attack on U.S. troops in Erbil. The military track on both sides is operating at an intensity that the previous 6 nights of escalating operations established as the baseline, and that the events of July 15th have elevated further. The intelligence track, embodied in the Reuters briefing, has publicly confirmed what the operational targeting choices have been implying across the entire campaign. The objective has expanded beyond Strait of Hormuz. Freedom of navigation into the prior preparation for complex operations that go beyond anything the current campaign has openly acknowledged. The stage is being set. The announcement of that fact in open source reporting is itself an operational event. It communicates to Tehran's decision makers that the American planning for what comes next is far enough advanced that briefing journalists about it is no longer a security concern. You brief the press about preparatory operations when the preparation is close enough to complete that its disclosure no longer provides the adversary useful warning time. The diplomatic track is producing its most contradictory signals of the entire conflict. Iran claiming to have initiated contact about a deal while simultaneously denying any negotiations exist, at the exact moment when the Situation Room is reviewing plans for a broader campaign. The contradictory signals from Tehran are the behavioral fingerprint of a command structure that is simultaneously reaching for de-escalation through one institutional channel, and being forced into continued escalation by another institutional channel that it cannot fully control. The faction that called about a deal cannot stop the faction that launched 21 drones at Kuwait and sent Shahed 101s into Erbil. And the faction that launched 21 drones at Kuwait cannot stop the faction that is apparently making phone calls about negotiations. The structural risk, as of July 15th, 2026, is the most acute and most immediate it has been at any point in this conflict. Not the escalation risk of the bridge bombing or the power plant compression campaign or the GBU-57 and Pickaxe Mountain. Those are significant and approaching. The immediate structural risk is the Erbil casualty question. If American service members are confirmed killed in Erbil today, if the burning in that footage represents something worse than facility damage, the operational response will not be calibrated to the staging logic of the broader campaign. It will be immediate, it will be large, and it will be driven by the domestic political reality that American presidents cannot absorb the death of American service members in direct enemy attack without a visible and proportionate or disproportionate response. The assessment of damage in Erbil is not yet complete. The intercepts were working. Most of the drones were stopped. But the burning in the footage is real. The direct impact in the airport region is visible, and the question of whether anyone was in the path of the one that got through is the operational variable on which the next 24 hours of this conflict most directly depend. In Erbil, Iraqi Kurdistan, at a U.S. military base that the State Department and the Department of Defense have maintained as one of the most important American operational nodes in the broader Middle East, Shahed 101 attack drones crossed the airspace in numbers calculated to overwhelm the air defenses protecting American troops. Most were stopped. Clean interceptions. The defensive network working exactly as designed. And then the footage shows burning where the burning should not be. The stage is being set. The complex operations are being planned. The Tehran barracks are being evacuated. The Bushehr anti-aircraft positions have been eliminated. Netanyahu is coming to Washington to meet with Trump. The Situation Room convened yesterday to review broader campaign plans, and somewhere in Erbil, Iraq, there is burning in the airport region of the U.S. base, and the damage assessment, the one that will determine whether American service members were killed in Iranian attack on American soil for the first time in this conflict, has not yet been confirmed. The answer to that question, when it comes, will determine what happens next more certainly than any targeting decision, any diplomatic development, or any Situation Room review of broader campaign plans. One drone got through. The burning is visible. The answer is coming. And when it comes, everything that follows will be shaped by what it says. The Shahed 101 specifically requires its own analytical attention because the IRGC's choice of this particular drone variant for the Erbil attack tells you something about the tactical doctrine being applied and about what the IRGC was attempting to achieve beyond simply inflicting damage. The Shahed 101 is a smaller, faster, and more maneuverable variant of the broader Shahed family than the Delta-Wing Shahed 136 that has been the primary instrument of IRGC maritime harassment operations, and the design that America reverse-engineered into the Lucy East drone. The 101 variant is optimized for a different operational purpose. It is designed to penetrate air defense networks whose sensor and intercept systems are calibrated for specific threat profiles. An air defense network configured to intercept the Shahed 136's flight profile, its speed, altitude, radar cross-section, and approach angles, faces a different engagement geometry against the Shahed 101. Not insurmountably different, as the Erbil footage confirms through its multiple clean interceptions. But different enough that a saturation attack using the 101 variant produces a statistical outcome in which even effective air defenses allow some percentage of the swarm to reach target proximity. The IRGC sent enough Shahed 101 drones at Erbil that statistical outcome applied. The defenses intercepted the vast majority. One apparently reached the airport region. That is not a failure of the air defense system operating at the Erbil base. That is the specific operational result the IRGC's saturation doctrine is designed to produce. Put enough platforms in the air against any finite air defense system, and probability eventually produces a hit, regardless of the system's competence. The IRGC cannot win a one-on-one engagement against American air defenses. It designed its drone fleet to achieve statistical certainty through volume, what it cannot achieve through platform superiority. This is the operational logic that makes the Erbil attack tactically coherent, even in the context of the IRGC's overall military situation of severe degradation. The IRGC's ballistic missiles are being intercepted at rates approaching complete failure. Its cruise missile launch sites are being eliminated in 90-minute operations. Its fast attack boat fleet has been substantially destroyed. Its naval infrastructure at Bandar Abbas is rubble. Its air defenses have been suppressed across the entire southern coast. What it retains is a production and dispersal capacity for small autonomous drones that have proven resistant to comprehensive elimination precisely because they are small, numerous, and potentially manufactured at a rate that exceeds the rate at which they are being destroyed. The American response, developing and deploying the Lucas drone as the IRGC's own concept returned against it, addresses this production resilience over time by inverting the cost economics of the drone campaign. But in the immediate term, the Shahed 101 saturation attack against Erbil demonstrates that the IRGC retains meaningful offensive capability at the small autonomous drone level, even as every other dimension of its military power has been systematically eliminated. The remaining question is whether that retained capability can achieve effects that alter the conflict's trajectory, or whether it is simply the final asymmetric instrument of an institution demonstrating that it can reach American forces even in its degraded state. The 21 drones and 4 cruise missiles shot down over Kuwait in a single day add a dimension to this question that the Erbil-focused coverage is not fully integrating. Kuwait shot down 21 IRGC drones today. 21 is not a targeted precision attack. 21 is a saturation assault. The Kuwaiti Air Defense Network, whatever combination of American-supplied Patriot systems, short-range air defense, and detection infrastructure Kuwait has assembled, processed 21 simultaneous or sequential drone engagements in a single operational day, in addition to 4 cruise missile intercepts. The operational loading on Kuwait's air defense system was extraordinary. That it performed successfully is the relevant operational fact, but the volume of the attack tells you that whoever authorized it was not concerned with proportionality or with signaling. The order that produced 21 drones over Kuwait was an order designed to overwhelm, to saturate, to find the seam in the defensive coverage through sheer volume. This is consistent with what the setting the stage Reuters briefing identified as the military context for the broader campaign review. If the IRGC retains the drone production and dispersal capacity to send 21 drones at Kuwait and Shahed 101s flooding into Erbil airspace in the same operational day, the complex operations being prepared for require the prior elimination, not just of the coastal defense grid and the cruise missile launch sites, but of the dispersed drone production and dispersal infrastructure that is sustaining the saturation attack capability. That infrastructure is the next targeting problem. It is more distributed, more hidden, more resistant to the conventional strike approach that has worked against fixed installations and mobile missile launchers, and it is producing the drones that put the burning in the Erbil footage. The blockade's immediate operational effects, commercial ships attempting to run it, being stopped and turned around on the same day it was reinstated, confirm that the naval enforcement mechanism is functioning with the operational authority that Trump's Truth Social Declaration assigned to it. Ships that attempt to transit toward Iranian ports or from Iranian ports without complying with the blockade framework are being physically intercepted and redirected. The economic isolation of Iran that the blockade imposes is not theoretical. It is happening in real time, in the same operational period that 21 drones are being shot down over Kuwait, and Shahed 101s are attacking Erbil. The Iranian propaganda operation claiming that the U.S. destroyed a civilian wheat storage facility, rapidly refuted by CENTCOM's specific target list confirming military strikes at Bandar Abbas, Khormaj, Ahvaz, Qeshm, Tonb, Bushehr, and Kuhestak, reveals the specific counter-narrative the IRGC is attempting to construct in response to the compression campaign's public announcement. Power plants and bridges and civilian infrastructure coming next. What better preemptive narrative to establish than that American strikes are already targeting civilian food storage? The wheat facility claim is the opening move in an information operation designed to pre-position the civilian harm narrative before the compression campaign has even begun executing against civilian infrastructure targets. CENTCOM's specific denial with a named target list is the institutional response to that information operation. Every specific target CENTCOM names is a data point against the general claim of civilian targeting. The specificity of confirmed military targets, naval bases, air defense positions, cruise missile storage, coastal defense infrastructure, establishes the pattern record that makes each subsequent Iranian propaganda claim more difficult to sustain against the documented evidence. The Netanyahu-Trump meeting timing deserves analytical weight beyond the diplomatic courtesy framing it might receive in less critical coverage. Netanyahu arriving in Washington at the moment when the Situation Room has convened to review broader campaign plans, when the stage is being set for complex operations, when the Bushehr nuclear plant's air defenses are being specifically eliminated, and when one of the conflict's central strategic questions, the future of the Iranian nuclear program, is approaching its operational decision point, is not arriving for a bilateral conversation about historical grievances and long-standing alliances. He is arriving to coordinate on decisions that may be made in the next 48 to 72 hours, and whose consequences for Israeli security are as direct as their consequences for American military objectives. The Iranian nuclear question is the dimension of this conflict whose resolution the current operational arc is most systematically moving toward. Pickaxe Mountain publicly named, the GBU-57 publicly acknowledged as the intended instrument, the Bushehr plant's air defenses specifically eliminated as a shaping operation, Trump's Situation Room meeting for a broader campaign, the Reuters briefing about setting the stage for complex operations, Netanyahu arriving to meet Trump. These are not coincident developments in a fluid operational environment. They are the convergence of multiple preparatory threads toward a decision point whose nature is not being stated explicitly in any public forum, but whose implied content is unmistakable to anyone who has been tracking the operational sequence. The honest strategic assessment of July 15, 2026 requires acknowledging that the conflict has entered a phase for which the previous week's operational pattern was preparation rather than the campaign itself. The systematic degradation of IRGC coastal defense infrastructure, the elimination of radar networks, the destruction of cruise missile launch sites, the first ever combat use of sea drones, the reinstatement of the blockade, the compression campaign's public announcement, the Bushehr anti-aircraft shaping operation, all of it has been preparation. The Situation Room meeting on July 14th reviewed plans for what comes after the preparation is complete. U.S. officials told Reuters the stage is being set for complex operations. And on the day all of this is developing, the IRGC sent Shahed 101 drones into the airspace above an American military base in Erbil, Iraq. One appears to have reached the airport region. There is burning in the footage. The casualty assessment is pending. In every previous phase of this conflict, the calculation about what the IRGC could and could not absorb has been informed by the implicit constraint that American service members had not been killed in direct Iranian attack. That constraint has been the boundary condition that separated the current campaign's operational framework from the 1,000-missile, one-year authorization framework that Trump publicly activated as the response protocol for an Iranian assassination attempt. The Erbil attack introduces the possibility, not yet confirmed but visible in the burning footage, that this boundary condition has been crossed. The stage is set. The complex operations are being reviewed. The Bushehr defenses are shaped. The barracks in Tehran are being evacuated. Netanyahu is flying to Washington. And in Erbil, Iraq, there is burning where the burning should not be. The answer to the casualty question in Erbil is not just an intelligence and medical fact. It is the variable that determines whether the next operational decision is made within the framework of the broader campaign being planned or within the framework of the 1,000 missiles that are already locked, loaded, and aimed. One drone got through in Erbil. The burning is visible. The assessment is coming. When it does, everything that follows, the power plants, the bridges, the GBU-57, the complex operations, every element of what has been being prepared will be shaped by what it says. The stage is set, and the play has not yet been named.